The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 12th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. Now among those who went up to worship at the festival were some Greeks. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and said to him, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Philip went and told Andrew, then Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their life lose it, and those who hate their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. Whoever serves me, the Father will honor. Now my soul is troubled, and what should I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it is for this reason that I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came from heaven, "I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again." The crowd standing there heard it and said that it was thunder. Others said, "An angel has spoken to him." Jesus answered, "This voice has come for your sake, not for mine. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." He said this to indicate the kind of death he was to die. The Gospel of the Lord. So, I've always wondered about these Greeks in today's Gospel reading. Who are these people? Where did they come from? And why do they want to see Jesus? As John sets the story up, Jesus and his disciples have arrived in Jerusalem for Passover, and Jesus is about to be betrayed and killed. But at that time, Jerusalem had swelled with people from all over the world, or at least all over the Roman world, who had come to worship at the festival, who had come to be there for Passover, because in those days, to be at Passover meant go to Jerusalem, be at the temple where the Passover lamb would be sacrificed. And among these throngs and throngs of people are some Greeks. And that term simply probably means Gentiles. People who were not Jews. When you read about Jews and Greeks in the New Testament, usually it means Jews and people who aren't Jews. These are people who are not actually Jewish people and who came from someplace probably outside of Israel. But were these Greeks Gentile converts to Judaism, or simply tourists who came to be part of the celebration and see what this was all about? And why did they want to see Jesus? Was it because they had heard of miraculous reports about things that he had done? Right before this, Jesus has raised Lazarus from the dead, and lots of people were seeking Jesus out because of that. Was that why? Or did they want to learn more about Jesus? Did they want to follow him, listen to his teaching? Did they wonder whether he might be the Messiah? Honestly, did they even know what the term Messiah meant? We never find out any of this stuff. As soon as the Greeks appear in the story, they immediately vanish. They simply have one speaking line. They come up to Philip and say, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." And Philip seizes that opportunity to be a witness to Jesus, just like Patrick did, and no, not like Patrick did, because he panics and he's not sure what to do. So he runs and tells Andrew and goes, "What do we do?" Andrew goes, "Uh-oh." And the two of them then run and they tell Jesus. And we never actually find out whether the Greeks got to see Jesus or not. We never know if they said or asked anything else, and we don't know if they followed along behind Philip and Andrew while they were sort of confused, or whether they even found Jesus and listened to him teach the crowds. I would like to know all of those things. But apparently, those things were not important for John when he wrote his gospel. What was important was that the Greeks showing up meant that Jesus was already doing what he goes on to say he's come to do. He says, "I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." I am already doing that. I am already drawing people from outside the scope of people you think might be included in God's love. And John remembers these words not simply because it's a prediction of the kind of death Jesus is going to die by being lifted up on the cross, but because it also reminds Philip and Andrew and all of the rest of the disciples that they should expect more people to ask to see Jesus. and they understand that seeing Jesus doesn't mean that guy over there in the corner of the Temple Mount, see, take a picture, go home, you're a tourist now. They mean actually get to know Jesus, to find out who Jesus is, what Jesus is all about, and in so doing, find out who God is and what God is all about in their lives. Philip and Andrew, it seems, were not exactly sure how to help these Greeks see Jesus. If it was just about seeing with their eyes, they could have said, well, go over there, you'll see him. And often, we are not sure how to help people see Jesus either. And of course, even Philip and Andrew knew that seeing Jesus meant more than just watching somebody on the Temple Mount, and maybe that is why it was so daunting for them. Maybe that's why they sort of ran around and wondered, what do we do now? But Philip and Andrew, they didn't get it all wrong, and we can learn some important things from what they did. Because even though they seemed confused and uncertain, they got a couple things right, things that they undoubtedly remembered in encounters with future Greeks, other people who wanted to know about Jesus. I suspect that Philip and Andrew learned that if they were to be disciples through whom others could find out about Jesus, they would need to be open to God's timing instead of their own. See, I don't think they were expecting to meet Greeks that day. They were not expecting to meet strangers who would walk up to them and say, hey, what's up with this Jesus guy? Or to have to introduce people to Jesus. But when the situation presented itself, they did something with the opportunity. They said, somehow we got to figure out how we can do this. But it wasn't because they went out saying, we are going to go find some people and introduce them to Jesus. It was because people showed up and said, okay, we're ready to meet Jesus. Where is he? Philip and Andrew were people who somehow had the right attitude. They didn't send the Greeks away. I mean, when you read the New Testament, there are battles between Jews and Gentiles, Christian Jews and Christian Gentiles, about whether the others could be fully included or not. But Philip and Andrew immediately go, no, we got to include these folks. And they didn't also decide, you know what, I am a disciple. My job description says I sit here at the feet of Jesus and listen to Jesus. I learn. I am not into marketing. That is not my job. That got to be somebody else's job. It was their job now, and they decided they were going to do it. And most importantly, Philip and Andrew decided that what they needed to do first was seek Jesus' help. They didn't know what to do, so they went and they found Jesus. And for the rest of their lives, either in person or through prayer, their first instinct was when they didn't know what to do, they had to find Jesus. They had to ask Jesus. They had to be open to Jesus' guidance in their life. And that's an important part of helping others to see Jesus, knowing that finally it is about Jesus. It is not about us. So those are important things, I think, for us to remember as well. Because as disciples of Jesus in this day and age, we're sometimes the people who are called on to show Jesus to others. And sometimes, like Philip and Andrew, those times come when we do not expect them. They come from people we do not expect to ask us, and often we're not even sure why people are asking us about Jesus or our faith in Jesus. I mean, I got to admit, sometimes when people say, oh, and this is a professional problem that I have, people walk up, oh, you're a minister. So let me ask you about something. And immediately I think, oh, they're just asking me about somebody who said something outrageously stupid or bizarre or horrible, and whether I agree with it or not, just to see if all Christians are like that or not. But sometimes, even if that's the case, maybe especially if that's the case, the importance of going, no, that's not what Jesus is all about. This is what Jesus is all about, is the most important thing you can do. Because more and more, there are people who are authentically looking to see Jesus and wonder if there is something to this Jesus guy we talk about. And they're going to be looking, not actually, usually, to come into church and talk to a professional pastor about this. They're going to look for people they know and trust. They'll look for you. They're going to say, you actually, go to church once in a while, and you actually say you believe in God. And so show us who Jesus is. Show us Jesus. Who is Jesus to you? How do you know Jesus? And what they really want and need is not a theological discourse or to be handed a tract or a Bible. Instead, they need actual disciples like Philip and Andrew, like you and me, who are willing to act and speak with the right timing. Philip and Andrew, respond when the Greeks ask and when the Greeks want to listen. Sometimes Christians get into trouble because they decide, we're going to show Jesus to others on our timetable. Hey, you seem like you're having a hard time. You know what you really need? You need a good dose of Jesus. Let me give you a dose of Jesus. And, honestly, maybe they do need some Jesus, but trying to give them a dose of Jesus when they're not willing to think about that yet, that is going to do more harm than good. Even though it's well-intentioned, being open to God's timing and not our own is often the first part of showing people Jesus. And for us, too, that means, like Philip and Andrew, having the right attitude. Philip and Andrew don't know why the Greeks were looking to see Jesus. But finally, it didn't matter. Because even if the Greeks were just looking for a miracle worker and saying, hey, maybe Jesus will do some kind of miracle in front of us and we'll have a great experience to tell people about when we go home, maybe they would have stuck around long enough to hear some things to make them think, maybe there's more to this. And sometimes, even when we're being questioned about why it is that we believe in Jesus or why it is that we even go to church or believe that God exists, sometimes the things that we say and do, the witness that we have just of our own lives, that allows people, even if they're just looking for confirmation bias that maybe this is all a bunch of hooey, maybe they hear something or see something through us that changes their mind. And for us too, when we're looking to help people see Jesus, or if we're going to be disciples who are at least open to helping people see Jesus, it means we have to also have an appreciation for Jesus' help in our lives. Philip and Andrew sought and relied upon Jesus' help, and we should do that too. Jesus says, I will draw all people to myself, not you. And we ought to act out of trust in his promise and not think it depends on us. So I'll tell you, there have been times in my life, and maybe in yours too, when I was asked something about my faith or what I believe, but it happened at a time, again, that I was not expecting it, and it was not in the context of, you're a pastor, I'm going to ask you this. Somebody just said something or blah, blah, and I responded with something that came out of my mouth that I don't know where it came from because I didn't plan it. And it's like, wait, that was good. How can I should remember that. But that was, I feel like, a moment that God just used me to help somebody learn something. And sometimes remembering that it's really not about me is the most important thing. Sometimes being the person through whom Jesus can make himself known is the best way to help people see Jesus. Because you'll notice, what the Greeks ask for is not knowledge about Jesus. They don't tell us about Jesus. Instead, what they want to do is see and experience Jesus. And that is finally the job of Christian disciples. We are supposed to live and act and speak and show through our attitudes who Jesus is so that Jesus can work through us. If we do that, there are no guarantees people will come to faith in Jesus or change their minds if they decide that all this God stuff isn't really for them. But if we live faithfully as disciples, we can be sure that Jesus will enable us to be instruments of his love in the lives of others, whether they appreciate it or not. If we live faithfully as his disciples, we can be sure that Jesus will be working through us to draw others to him, even if we don't see that. And if we live faithfully as his disciples, we can be sure that others, whether they know it or not, will be able to catch a glimpse of Jesus in us.